what is coordinate geometry? Geometry is the study of shapes. So you could draw this triangle and you could investigate the sum of the interior angles is 180 degrees. We can say that. But with coordinate geometry, instead of this triangle just being a random triangle, we give each of these points, the 3 corners of the triangle, a location, a coordinate. And that will be in the form of some x coordinate and some y coordinate. The coordinate system is based on the Cartesian plane. So you have a x-axis, which is the horizontal axis, and you have a y-axis. And any point on the Cartesian plane will have 2 values. It will have an x-coordinate, so how much you go across by. So for example, you can go across by 1, and how much you go up by. So maybe you go across by 2. So this point, P, will be represented by 1, 2. And so points are represented on the Cartesian plane by coordinates. And these coordinates will have an x-coordinate and a y-coordinate. There are 4 different quadrants on the Cartesian plane. So you have the first quadrant where x and y are both positive numbers. You have the second quadrant. So if you look here, the x-coordinate will be negative, but the y-coordinate will be positive. The third quadrant, both coordinates are negative. And the fourth quadrant, the x-coordinate is positive, but the y-coordinate is negative. Next, we'll find the midpoint of a line. So you may be given a line in coordinate geometry, so a line between the points A and B, in this example, and you may be asked to find the midpoint, so the middle of the line. So how do we do that? So let's just consider, I'm just going to move these around. Let us consider just the x-axis, so a horizontal line between the point P and the point Q. Okay, let's just say P is has an x-coordinate of 1 and Q has an x-coordinate of 5. So, and the line between P and Q we can represent as PQ. So what is the middle of what is the midpoint of this line? So if the coordinates of P are 1, 0, or in this case probably 1, 2, and the coordinates of Q are 5, 2, because we've moved across on the x-axis, but the y-axis, the y-coordinate is staying the same. So what is the midpoint of this? Well, we find the midpoint, we can find the average of 1 and 5. And just by eye, you can see that it's 3, right? Because this would be, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 3 is smack bang in the middle between 1 and 5. Or else we can calculate this by finding the average of 1 and 5, which is 1 plus 5 divided by 2. And that's 6 divided by 2, which is equal to 3. And so the midpoint, which I'm going to call capital M, will be 3, and the y-coordinate is still 2. And if we extend this into 2 dimensions, it's the exact same thing, except we would do this with the y-coordinates. And for a line such as this one here, we would, to find the midpoint, to find the coordinates of the midpoint, we would find the average of the x values, and then you would find the average of the y values. And this is the formula that represents that. So you have the average of the x values, of the x coordinates, and here you have the average of the y coordinates. Now I'll just run through an example of using this midpoint formula. So this midpoint formula will be in the Formula and Tables book in the junior cert. So what is the midpoint of the line segment joining this point and this point? So let's just practice our knowledge of the Cartesian plane. So you have, this is the first quadrant, the second quadrant, the third quadrant, and the fourth quadrant. So the point A would be -3. So -3 would be somewhere over here. This is the x-axis and this is the y-axis. -3 would be somewhere over here. And 4, you would go up to 4. So the point A is somewhere here. And the point B is you go 1 and then you go up 2. So approximately here. And the line joining A and B would look like this. I'm going to draw that a bit straighter. And so the midpoint would be somewhere here, right? So you would expect it to be maybe in the first or second quadrant, depending on how accurate I've drew this graph. So now we can try use the formula. So the formula is that the midpoint, capital M, is equal to the average of the x values, so x1 plus x2 divided by 2. And the y-coordinate of the midpoint is y1 plus y2 divided by 2, the average of the y-coordinates. And you simply substitute these values in. So x1 would be the x-coordinate of A, x2 would be the x-coordinate of B, y1 would be the y-coordinate of A, and y2 would be the y-coordinate of B. And so you simply substitute these values in. So -3, x2 is +1 divided by 2. And then the y-coordinates would be 4 plus 2 divided by 2. And you simply simplify, so it would be -1 and 6 divided by 2 is 3. And so there you have your midpoint is -1, 3. And if we just have a quick look at our sketch over here, we see that indeed the midpoint, capital M, is approximately -1, just eyeballing it, and approximately it's less than 4, so approximately 3. What about another example where we're working backwards? So instead of being given 2 points and finding the midpoint, you're given 1 point, A, and you're given another point, M, and M, let's plot these out on the coordinates actually. So you're given 1 point A, which is 5, 2, so roughly here. This x-axis, this is the y-axis. The midpoint is 2, 4, so somewhere here. And we're, I'm just going to draw it over here. This is the midpoint, this is A, and we're being told that B is unknown. So B is somewhere over here, right? Because we're told we're given the midpoint, but we're not given B. But we know that between A and B lies M, right? Because it's the midpoint. So how do we find the coordinates of B? Well, if we know the coordinates of the midpoint are 2, 4, and we know the formula to find the midpoint, the coordinates of the midpoint, we can simply substitute these values in. So we're given that the coordinates of B are x1 and y1, while we can say the coordinates of A are x2 and y2. So now we simply just use those values. We use x1 and y1 because they are unknowns, so we can use algebra. So we could do x1 plus x2, which in this case is 5, divided by 2. And then the y-coordinates, you have y1 plus y2, which in this case is 2, divided by 2. Right? And so you can see that if we link these two, we know that the 2 is equal to this x-coordinate here, and we know that 4 is equal to this this expression here. And now you can simply solve this. So x1 plus 5 divided by 2, you multiply by 2 to get 4, and you're left with x1 plus 5, and then x1 would be equal to -1. And then for the y-coordinates, you do 4 is equal to y1 plus 2 divided by 2. You multiply by 2, multiply both sides by 2 to get 8 is equal to y1 plus 2, and y1 is equal to 6. So therefore, the coordinates of B are -1, 6.